Oh, bother.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with me, Yin Yang Total War. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be talking all about Total War Pharaoh and its High Tide update. If you are unaware of Total War Pharaoh's High Tide update, well, then I am honored to be the one bringing you this information, but it actually releases today, and it is a free update that is the size of at least the Chaos Dwarf DLC. So if you haven't checked out Total War Pharaoh, I would highly suggest that you do. I'm actually going to be starting a Let's Play on the channel for it tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. That said, let's go ahead and get started with this. What we're going to be doing is we're looking through the gameplay showcase for Total War Pharaoh, the mechanics update, and the overall update. In about 21 minutes of video, I'll stop and talk about things that I find interesting, and if you have any input, please put it down in the comment section below. That being said, let's get started.
You saved Egypt, rallied Hattusa, and settled Canaan. Now, prepare to tear it all down as you command the destiny of the Sea Peoples. Claim a new home for the Peliset, or let the world crumble as the Shaden. One new culture, 2 new playable factions, 2 additional royal traditions, 37 new unique units, a whole boatload of new horde and settled buildings, ancillaries and titles, and enough fancy hats to make any pharaoh blush. All this and more in the Total War Pharaoh High Tide free update. As always, you can find out more about the free update and all other official channel information by following the links below, but stick around to learn more about the Shaden and the Peliset, and why they pose such a significant threat to Bronze Age civilization.
Pretty exciting.
We'll start with the Shaden, a violent people led by Iolaus, who believes himself to be the brother of the...
Okay, so a little bit of shame on my part. I really thought that the more handsome of the two guys was going to be the one looking for a new home for his people, but no, he is a huge jerk, and that sounds pretty exciting.
Sun god Isu. Mad or not, his destructive philosophy has been fully embraced by his followers. The Shaden arrive on the shores of Anatolia and face the same conundrum as their Peliset rivals. Settle or pillage? Fresh off the boat, we have naught but our possessions and a dream, and whilst the promise of tending the land and being productive members of Bronze Age society may appeal to some, the Shaden answer to a higher call: fire and gold. To be the best raiders we can be, we'll embrace the War Spoils panel. Here we can quickly locate settlements that, once sacked or razed, will offer a resource we're in need of. Further, we can locate nearby settlements that will offer additional conquering incentives. These include war supplies, unit experience, increased map visibility, recruitable native warriors, a fresh pool of camp laborers, and exotic ancillaries.
Now that is a actual reason to go around the map and destroy stuff. That is fantastic. I really I really appreciate that they have tried to find a new way to make that more horde style, that more devastation style gameplay fun, instead of I'm destroying because I want to destroy, and then the enemy comes back behind me and resettles, and then I have to destroy it again. This is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to trying that out.
With that in mind, we're keen to expand the Shaden's roaming camp, so we'll find the closest settlement that offers camp labourers to give a boost to our productive capabilities. Further along the Levantine coast, Sinai and Canaan reluctantly make way for a budding new empire. The Peliset, led by Patriarch Welwetes, have claimed both the Megiddo and Ashkelon provinces, but are far from satisfied. As with the Shaden, the Peliset arrive as a horde and cannot innately settle. We must first acquire the New Lands Royal Decree. You'll notice the Sea Peoples have specific types of royal decrees they can enact: hybrid focus, horde focus, or settled focus. For Welwetes and the Peliset, we'll be exploring the settled decrees, which have a focus on civilization and resource building.
Now the real question is, do you lock out the other half of the technology tree? That's going to be interesting to see.
In the royal traditions window, we're able to pursue both the Egyptian and Hittite courts, though the cost of entry is triple that of native contenders. Thankfully, the Sea Peoples are not too keen on foreign thrones and have sailed across the Mediterranean to forge their own path. But will that path leave ash in its wake? Or life? The path of the Marauders offers unique ways to kill and devastate, whilst the path of the Sea Peoples encourages different playstyles, growth, and stability. For the Pella set, we'll select the path of the Sea Peoples, which does not tie us into a settled style of gameplay. Where we come from matters little. It's our actions that define who we are. For the Sea Peoples, only actions can prove their intentions, meaning we amass points relative to how we conduct ourselves on the campaign map. Dwelling and blade points are gained based on the units and generals we recruit, and the settlements and outposts we construct. There are horde and settled variants of both blade and dwelling points, and your total scores determine your ship's placement on the graph.
Now, anybody who says that Total War is no longer complicated enough, I mean, who expected this? Right? This is I'm not going to say it's paradox level, but I mean, it's definitely like leaps and bounds even ahead of anything in Warhammer. I'll say that.
Each graph tile offers specific boons to emphasize your chosen style of gameplay. For example, to be a primarily settled faction, the Pella set would aim to collect settled dwelling and settled blade points, which would place them in the top right quarter of the graph. No decision is final, and our playstyle can be altered at the drop of a dime. Indeed, the Sea Peoples must be as fluid as water if they hope to survive in these hostile lands. To that end, armies can be converted to settled or horde at the click of a button, and our blade points are updated accordingly. This locks the army out of horde building chains, and they can no longer recruit horde units. To truly become a settled people, the Pella set must expand their territory. The Sinai Peninsula will be a good starting point for our Pellastu Empire. Meanwhile, the Shaden's lust for riches and ruin has taken them down the path of the Marauders. Raise and exterminate is just one new tool Iolaus and his ilk employ to spread horror and mayhem across Anatolia. Power and dominion are the aim of the game for the Shaden. To effectively destroy the world, we'll need to earn eminence points, a currency we'll use to terrorize, scheme, and annihilate our opposition, which are earned by winning battles and raising settlements. An impossible fight can be made winnable with a promise of glory. Some soldiers are loyal to power and power alone, and will turn on their brothers at a whiff of a strong leader. Likewise, sometimes your prowess is such that you'll dominate an entire population and incite them to turn on their masters, tear their city to the ground, and join your cause for a time.
That is intense. And these are two very different play styles, like totally different play styles. I'd say this is more than what we got with the Chaos Dwarfs. Now, keep in mind that the Chaos Dwarfs had, like ridiculous stuff. The just all the machinery, all the different kinds of units that you can get. You're not going to get that from this kind of game, but still, the mechanics really bring it home. I'm excited for this.
Some armies cannot be bribed or turned to infighting, and so a display of power can be used to convince them of your mettle and strike fear into their hearts. Whilst ravaging the land, we'll capture some strategic locations and build Naragihi towers. These handy pit stops offer a few helpful benefits like food production or a stationable garrison to assist during sieges. The effects on offer change depending on if the outpost is positioned in a raised, foreign, or occupied region. We're building 2 towers outside of Hattusa, and we'll use them to rest our troops and say a prayer to Isul. When the time comes to attack, we can rely on the camp's garrisons to reinforce us. In the meanwhile, we'll upgrade our tribal gatherings building into a tribal assembly and get ourselves some dedicated camp defenders. Hattusa will be a tough fight, so we'd best start looking into recruiting some fiercer units. We'll also build a tier 2 idol of Isul, granting us considerable favour, meaning we can devote Iolaus to his brother god. But Isul is not the only god on offer, and the Sea People's deities are as diverse and wild as they themselves. The Pelasets started their journey in worship to Kuvava, the Mountain Mother, but her ways are harsh and warlike, and while we're
And guys, let me know if you know more about this than I do in the comment section. But I didn't realize that we were so up to date on what the Sea Peoples believed. I thought that they were an amalgamation of different groups of people who were kind of swept up in a horde, but maybe that's not the case.
Tess has commanded his people to instead take up prayer for Levez, who offers a more level-headed philosophy. After all, it takes both plough and sword to make a people, and both plough and sword have allowed us to upgrade our chieftain's compound into an estate, pushing us further into the realm of the legitimate. We'll aim to establish a royal tribal palace next, primarily for the happiness, and look to further our use of oxen caravans. In Sinai, the Peliset are making considerable progress. Indeed, Nebgehez is the last foreign power remaining in the region.
Okay, so this is something that I was hoping would change, but clearly it has not. The Peliset are known by by their tribal name. Ramses is still known by Ramses. And I understand that it's land that's loyal to him, but couldn't it have been Sinai or, I'm not going to get too far into that, but really, I mean, they should be the names not of who their loyalty is to, because I think that's what pushes a lot of people out of the realism of it. You can have states within an empire that are completely separate from each other, but still work within the same. And that's a lot of what happened back in ancient Egypt, and I mean, even what happens now. So, you know, I live in Florida. It's not called DeSantis, right? So just something to keep in mind.
Stuck to our goal and are largely a settled faction, but we've held on to a horde army as a precursor to invasion. Their role has been to seed discord and discontent ahead of our full army's arrival, while Wetes and his forces follow close behind, and his trapper ancillary helps to fatigue the region's defenders. Our horde army has surrounded the capital and built the necessary siege equipment, whilst Wetes has dealt with nearby fort garrisons and standing armies. We'll begin our final siege shortly. But, as it's Shemsu-Hor, and we've not used our faction command, we have access to oxen carts in the special recruitment tab. We'll add a unit to Wetes' army and begin the invasion proper.
Put your strength to use.
To say the Peliset are honourable might be a bit of a stretch, but they do abide by their own rules of engagement. As such, generals with the champion in single combat title can initiate single combat with the enemy general. A successful use of the title rids Nebgehez of its garrison general and makes for an easier conquest.
Really?
The Shaden are even less honourable and would gain the upper hand in combat by any and all means. Euleus.
Now, it would be even better if you zoomed into a fight and you and the enemy general actually like duked it out. That would be a lot better. That's a cool mechanic, but it would be a lot better if you actually had to fight for that.
His scouts give us a considerable foresight advantage for better strategic planning, and the bonus to port raising can keep us going for longer without need of a rest. Further, on a successful use of the first phase title, we can fake out the Hittite standing army, driving them into the awaiting swords of a nearby ambush. With the odds turned in our favour, we'll activate our faction command heat of the battle to wait for the perfect attacking weather conditions before striking at the heart of the Hittites' cultural identity. Amongst the 37 new units on offer, the Shaden boast various melee and ranged, light, medium and heavy armor-wearing warriors to suit every occasion. From the Shaden warband to the Naregi seasoned harpooneers, Euleus' hordes will take until nothing remains. Akin to their Shaden cousins, the Peliset are equally as diverse and varied, ready for any and all conflicts they may face. None are as ready to claim new lands as the renowned Palastu swordsmen. None, perhaps, than their horde-like counterparts, the Peliset Marines.
Pretty cool new unit.
The seas awaken, and new threats approach the shores of civilization. High tides both sweep away and bring unexpected treasures. Will you embrace the collapse, carve yourself a home, or become a nomad? To survive the trials ahead, you must be as fluid and as violent as the sea. What would you become?
Cool.
Let us know in the comments below, or follow our links to find out more.
Let's go ahead into the next one here.
The skies turn black, and the high tide has brought settlers from the seas, harbingers of collapse of this very age. The Paliset, as led by steadfast warrior and patriarch Walwetes, and the Shurton,
I'm liking
led by a
Walwetes
man with
even
fiery
better all the
ambition,
time.
Eoleus. Not only will these factions bring new units and a new narrative
Okay, there's those oxen cards. Those look pretty. Those look pretty cool. I can't imagine they are very fast, but still, it's pretty sweet.
for you to fulfill, but they also bring new mechanics unique to the Sea People's armies. Let's take a look at the new features the Sea Peoples have in Total War Pharaoh, High Tide. The Sea Peoples start quite differently from the other factions of Total War Pharaoh. Arriving on the shores of Canaan as Walwetes and Anatolia as Eoleus, both leaders do not start with the settlement to call their own. Both the Shurton and the Paliset are hybrid factions, by which we mean they can both be a horde, a classic settling faction, or a combination of the two. Through the new royal decrees set out for the Sea People's factions, you can determine how you want to play mechanically. Do you invest in settling, ending your days as a roaming horde and calling these new lands home? Do you opt to take everything not nailed down, burn down the walls of society, and remain nomadic to the end? Or, alternatively, do you combine both outlooks, opting for the stability city walls can bring, whilst also hunting down those who would try to depose you? Choosing the nomadic.
That's pretty cool. You can play wide, you can play horde, or you can play very, very tall. That's really exciting. There's not very many factions that you can play tall with in any Total War. Now you can always make it happen. Like I take that back. The Wood Elves you can play tall, but but most factions you can't do that. So that's pretty cool.
Horde path is something within the Sea People's psyche, but as a Total War player, you might be concerned as to how to keep your war camp thriving. After all, it can be difficult to prosper when your foundation is ever moving. War Spoils is a mechanic we're adding for the Sea Peoples in Total War Pharaoh, High Tide. Through War Spoils, you can locate the closest high-value targets for large payouts of resources, or for prizes like ancillaries, soldiers, or workforce surplus. After collecting your reward through Force, you'll need to wait for them to become available again. To get the most from War Spoils, you'll need to be acting as a Horde faction, as the more settlements you own, the less potent War Spoils become, until eventually there's no gain from them. If you're playing as the Paliset or the Shurton as a Horde force, however, War Spoils is key to ensure your survival in the end of the Bronze Age.
A major tool in the Sea People's arsenal is the Tribal Outpost. Whether you're playing as a Horde or as a settled army, the buffs these outposts give you will be pivotal for your victory. Outposts can be constructed in the settlement's region whether you own the nearby settlement or not.
Okay, so that's what they were talking about in the towards the middle to the end of the last video when they were talking about like popping down outposts. Now we're about to see exactly what this is, so that's pretty cool.
By sending your army to their position, you can take the outpost and then build a tribal outpost there, staking your claim
so they're the
without
ones that are
needing
already
to own the
established.
land. Tribal outposts come in three forms, depending on the state of the settlement, ranging from foreign region, owned region, and raised region. They offer food, recruitment slots.
Now with that raised region, if you want to go for a total Horde faction, you can still do that and then keep those regions basically terrorized forever, where they can't, where the enemies can't come back in and take it. That's pretty cool.
Improved ambush chances and influence.
The paths to power available during the Bronze Age collapse are many. Some choose to be the Great King of the Hittites, some the Pharaoh of Egypt. For the Sea Peoples, these choices are still present, but the simple cost of entering their courts are 3 times higher than their counterparts. With a price so high, and an age so cataclysmic, surely the old ways only lead to ruin. Why choose tradition when you can forge your own path? In High Tide, the Sea Peoples get access to their own path of power, electing not to take the path of the Great King or Pharaoh, but rather the path of the Sea Peoples, or the path of the Marauder. The path of the Sea Peoples represents the hybrid nature of the Peliset and Sherden forces, allowing you to balance your playstyle between Horde and Settler. The menu shows off the balance like this. Each square grants different boons. Your position on the chart is calculated through your blades and dwelling points that are separated into Horde and Settled. To gain more Horde blades and dwelling points, you need to build up your Horde armies and their structures, as well as building tribal outposts. For Settled points, you need to build up your captured settlements and your settled armies. Your points values can be changed by changing hordes into armies or by granting sovereignty to settlements. Both of these changes are also reversible. If you want to spend some time in the center of the chart, you can use the Akish ceremony to return to the center for a few turns. Find your balance, or sway it to direct your peoples to a new life.
That's pretty sick. That's like really cool, especially you can grant sovereignty to your settlements. Like you could create a little empire of kind of like the empire is supposed to be, where it's more feudal, right? That's pretty cool. That's pretty sweet.
The Path of the Marauders is a path to power the Sea Peoples, as well as all other current factions can take to spread fear in these lands. By taking the Path of the Marauders, you gain a new resource, Eminence. You gain this by performing aggressive actions on your conquest, like raiding, raising settlements, and of course, through combat. By earning Eminence, you gain new abilities to use both pre- and post-battle. Promise of Glory allows you to bribe enemy units over to your side before a battle, casting aside loyalty to their leaders for a chance to survive under the New World Order. Dominance sees you turning the local populace against the settlement pre-battle, provided the garrison is small enough. Those who took up arms against the garrison become their own army also, but they cannot gain experience or exchange units, but are willing to die in the name of overthrowing their previous rulers. A display of power can be used to frighten and demoralize your foes before combat, striking fear into their hearts for a low cost of eminence. Finally, once you've won a battle for a settlement, you can opt to raze and exterminate it. Doing so grants you additional loot and rewards from burning it asunder, as well as giving you additional replenishment for your forces and influence, depending on the size of settlement you burn to the ground on your path to power. These are the new tools in your arsenal coming with High Tide.
That's insane. You can really play a bad guy. I mean, there's always bad guys, right? But you can really play a bad guy in this game. That's very exciting. I don't know which one. I kind of want to do both. I kind of want to, well, all three really, because there's that hybrid style too. So,
will you take on the path of the Sea Peoples and make yourself a home in new lands as the Peliset or the Sherden? Or will you take on the path of the Marauder and burn down these lands to begin anew? The High Tide is rolling in, and with it comes the end of an age. Will you ride the waves or succumb to them?
that's really cool. I can see. Listen, I have never been excited about the Bronze Age. Even Troy, it brought back a lot of fond memories of, Brad Pitt uh slicing and dicing everyone in the Greek world, and Hector, Paris of Troy, like so many good memories, even of the older games, like the Dynasty Warriors, but the Dynasty Warriors Troy game, if you've ever heard of that. But this gets me pretty pumped up because I was never a big fan of this. And I think if you go all the way back to my original uh, outlook on Pharaoh, I was like, why? But I had tried to maintain some positivity on it, but I was never really excited. Seeing this kind of gameplay gets me pretty excited. Now let's check out what else is going on in Pharaoh. This is going to be a really short video, only a minute long. So we'll see what the other factions are getting. I was really hoping that they were going to update the naming conventions of the factions on the map, but no dice for me, apparently. That said, let's take a look at what they are updating.
Ra's blessings be upon us, for it is Patch Nose Day. There's no greater joy in life than crushing one's enemies beneath hoof and wheel and relishing in the laments of their kin. Oh, lovely. We've improved chariot collisions and handling, making your cycle charges more impactful and gratifying. The AI has been given homework and players can now expect improved battle behaviors, including around how it deploys armies and forms front lines on the battlefield. Further, the morale system has been reworked to account for an individual entity's health when counting overall losses. Elsewhere, Matt blesses us with fixes to terrain, certain assets, and battle catchment areas, as well as some TLC to the UI. Our fixes are legion. Oh, that's a good segue. Both main and minor settlement garrisons are now better trained and beefier. Sorry, Isu stands, you'll have to start thinking about your conquests. We've also performed numerous bug fixes and tweaks relating to stance, unit balance, collision, animation, outpost, ancient legacies, and my inability to win a Super Lumiyuma. That's not a bug. Agree to disagree. All this and more as part of the High Tide free update for Total War Pharaoh. Head over to the blog to read the full notes.
Okay, we can check out those notes real quick. I'm not going to hold you guys up too long. And for any of you who are still with me, I do appreciate that. Not really worried about performance and all that stuff. Okay, so we're going to skip all this. We're just going to look at the actual patch notes. Improved the battle AI's behavior, armor deployment, and frontline formations. Very cool. Tweaks to unit morale by considering individual entity health when counting overall losses. Adjustments to chariot handling and collisions. Guys, again, if you've been playing it and you know about all this stuff, then hopefully this is better. I have not been playing very much Total War Pharaoh. I think my hours are sitting at about 2, maybe 3 right now. So that being said, boost to quality and quantity of garrison units. Always a good thing to hear. I want some full-on garrisons on some of these cities. Addressed multiple visual issues of terrain gaps. Okay, so that's all the stuff that they already said. Let's take a look. Performance. I'm sure that many of us, like myself, haven't really been involved, but there you go. If you have been, there's your performance updates. Main screen graphics controls implemented a shortcut to undo a turn with Control U. You can undo a turn? What? Okay. I'm not even going to get into that. That's pretty crazy. The UI scale at 4K is now limited to a minimum of 50%. Fixed an issue where the strategic overlays panel disappears at maximum height when any other UI element is open. Okay. Resolved an issue of screen flickering. Okay. That's just graphics. Campaign. Okay. Added new tooltips for locked features due to Shimsu Horde. I'm not sure what that is. Corrected a minor server side issue that was preventing the Bay Ultimate Victory achievement from being awarded. Okay, that's pretty crappy. It took that long to get around to that. Change the required number of soldiers for colonized settlement to be based on the current health of the army instead of the full health. That's pretty. I'm sure that's pretty important. Regardless, fix an issue wherein selecting an enemy army and your own would result in a distorted army movement range. Okay, so this is graphical stuff again. Campaign AI elevated the priority of campaign AI actions for attacking forts. That's good. Faction leaders. We're not going to worry about ancillaries and stuff. Settlement buildings, diplomacy. Okay, the warning for issuing an ultimatum will now display the penalties for the player, or that the player will suffer in both cases. When the AI accepts the ultimatum, no war. When it rejects it, war erupted. Previously, it only showed the penalties in the case where the AI accepted the ultimatum. Pretender and ruler factions will no longer be valid targets for vassalization or confederation. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because they're trying to overthrow each other. Corrected a bug where invading armies would occasionally fail to declare war on the player and other factions. Okay, good. Fixed an issue where the forced annexation tooltip was not initialized when the diplomacy panel was open. Very good. Implemented a change that clicking the intern notification for barter expired. Okay, I'm not even gonna. Court. I mean, I'd like to tell you guys how cool all this stuff is. I don't know what was wrong to begin with. So I'll leave a link to this in my video as well. But you're going to be seeing all of this probably even before this video comes out, if not pretty soon after, assuming that you have Total War Pharaoh. Now, that being said, if you are still on the fence about Total War Pharaoh, well then, here we'll have something cool to look at the end. If you're still on the fence about Total War Pharaoh, then I welcome you to join me as I explore the game. Starting tomorrow, we're going to have Pharaoh Fridays on the channel, probably for the foreseeable future. At least 1 or 2 campaigns getting it in with Total War Pharaoh. So I think that I think that this update really kind of makes me excited, and I hope that it makes other people excited as well, because there's a lot that is clearly going into this game, a lot of mechanics that are going into this game. And if we show this game some love, I think that we have a better chance of getting those awesome mechanics kind of ported over into Total War Warhammer, into the next major historical, which I'm always crossing my fingers is Empire 2 or a Victoria Total War, although I would kill for a Medieval 3 as well. Anyway, I'm not going to continue to just babble on for no reason. But to all my friends, wherever you are, good morning, good evening, and good night. I'll catch you later.